Listen, I will just say this right now, that I am very proud and very happy to be part of GTX Film. It's an amazing organization, and we are truly proud and honored to have screened this film for all of you in the city of Georgetown, on the square, at the Georgetown Palace Theater, and we are super honored to have the director, producer of the film to talk all things Tanya, is Kathlyn Horan. You are so welcome. Thank you so much.
The tequila's next door. I was drinking it while y'all were watching the film. In case you're wondering, Wildfire, I think it's called.
All right. You were at Wildfire?
I was.
That is a great place.
I mean, I love this film, but I can see it in my sleep.
Well, I have several questions for you, but I want to tell you, watching this film, you know, first of all, I will say I've known Tanya Tucker, I've known about Tanya Tucker, but I didn't know her like this. So I want to start out with, because I've done my homework, I've done my research.
I see, I'm scared.
And I want to start out with, you've known BRANDI CARLILE for a while, right, through the Indigo Girls?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And tell everybody that's here how this project came to fruition by a simple text message.
Yeah, so I've known Brandy for maybe 10 or something years prior to this and done some projects with her. So we had a friendship and a work relationship. I'd done some music videos and things for her foundation, and she supported a previous film of mine through her foundation. And so one Sunday morning, I get a text message from her wife that said, "You want to hear something crazy?" And so I thought, like, do I? Because you never know what it's going to be. And so we hopped on the phone, and Brandy told me that she had this opportunity to produce Tanya's first record in 17 years, first record of original music. And she knew that I was a fan. I'm originally from Georgia. So she assumed or had some knowledge that I was a fan of Tanya's. And she had talked to Rick Rubin, who had done Johnny Cash's American Recordings. And the one thing that Rick said to her was, make sure that you document this. And so she said, what do you think? Are you in? Of course I'm in. When do we start? And she said, tomorrow morning.
Just like that, tomorrow morning.
Just like that. So, yeah, number one, always answer a text from Brandy or her wife because something exciting is going to happen, but be ready. And so I called my DP, Jessica Young, who I work with a lot. I was like, this is happening, and I called one of my best friends. Like, you got to get down here, small crew, we just need some support. And it was like a strange alignment of everything to work out, that everybody was on board and stepped in, and magic happened.
Definitely magic. I mean, this is such a great documentary. So from day one to release date, how long did this shoot take?
So that was January of 2019 that we started filming, and then we finished major principal photography at the Grandies, so that was January of 2020, and then COVID happened, and then we did some pickup shoots along the way, went into post-production and editing, and there was like fundraising, of course, journey through the whole course of that, and then we premiered here at South by Southwest last year.
And you won an award.
Oh yeah, it was an audience life film, so we got that award.
That's awesome.
Yeah, worked out.
No, that's great. So this is your second go around in the Austin area for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah,
And this is beautiful. I love Georgetown.
Yeah, no. We were talking about it earlier about the square. And thank you, yes. I shared with her that this is the, and she said, oh. I shared with her and I said, you know, this is the only area or the only city in the Austin area where you can have an open container and walk around the street with your drink. And she said, damn it.
I left my margarita, like someone had bought me a margarita next door, and I left it. I was like, I can't have 2 margaritas and do a Q&A. So I left it, but I knew you could have walked around it. I didn't know. They should put signs up.
That's No, they shouldn't, because if you live in Georgetown, you know, right? You know. Next time. That's why we live here. Who said amen? You did? So the album was completed pretty quickly. How much of the filming were you hoping to share with the world about what goes on in, with just the production of an album?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. It was one of the things that we tried to work on, like how much is interesting and how to keep the production of an album interesting. Because to me, it's fascinating, particularly the way that they made this record was interesting. And two people who'd never met, someone who was used to recording on analog, not doing vocal comps, like it was a complete coming together of two different worlds, but also with the same soul. Like obviously you see how quickly Brandy and Tanya came together, and Shooter and Tanya had known each other since Shooter was little. But so there's a emotional and sort of spiritual connecting aspect that was happening, and then Tanya stepping into this world with having courage to do this and also let it be filmed. So initially I thought this was going to be, it was a version of a film that it was all this production that took you throughout and sort of dipping back into her past throughout it, but that was before we followed the course of the year and as the journey went through the record. Because as you make films, documentaries, you don't know. You make a story in your mind at first, and then it's never the one that you think it's going to be because everything changes as you move forward. But the guiding factor to me was I wanted to show process and creative process because I think it's fascinating, but you always want to make sure it's as fascinating to the audience. I always think about the audience when making a film where it's not just, oh, I think this is interesting and I'm going to torture people. But like, is this like as the fly on the wall and the ability to be there, there's something that was so vulnerable was hugely important for us and my editor, Brady Hammis, and like to keep going back to where's the heart of the story and where's the emotional pull into these scenes work, and are we seeing the process, but also really emotionally feeling the process. So hopefully it worked out.
I think it worked out. Do you all think it worked out? So you've shot some music videos in your career, and you've shot documentaries. What's the difference, in your opinion, shooting a music video for a musician versus a documentary like this about their life or a day in their life?
I think the main difference in this case is with docs or a doc like this is to disappear. And with the music video, what you're doing is more present than what the artist is doing. In fact, it's more about the camera work. It's about, let me put you here and so we can show you this way, and it's more technical. And in this case, Jessica Young, my DP, and myself shot most of this film, and the goal with and why she's so awesome is that you can go in a room and then disappear and you become part of the fabric, which is also why a lot of the studio stuff worked, and Tanya and Brandy and the whole team was like, oh, you just guys became part of the band. And so the difference in that is like you want to be present but go away.
Right.
And so everyone could just be completely themselves. And Tanya actually likes to be filmed, so it works out. I mean, she said at some point, I think we were, unfortunately, there was like I think I told you, like a 5-hour version of the film.
Yeah.
And in one of the scenes, she turns around and says to somebody, I don't know anything unless it's on camera. Like, that's the greatest thing you could say to a documentary. And not performative at all. Like, she's just like, happy, come along, guys. Like, I don't mind it. And that way, it's just, you're part of the team and part of the crew, but still, just, you can fade away.
Well, gosh, she's been doing this since she was 13?
Yeah.
11, 13?
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
It's not unfamiliar for
Yeah,
a documentary.
for sure. What can you share with us that you learned about Tanya during this process?
I mean, I learned so much through the process and every day, because I'm still in communication with her pretty regularly. But
she showed me a text. So
yeah, it's like a really long text. Yeah, I think I would love to do it, just a Q&A where I just read our texts. But I was a fan, so it's like anytime you approach a film, I don't want to make like a blow smoke up your ass kind of film. I want to show like the humanity and the truth and that's how we all connect. There's commonality with all of us. And so you never know what you're going to get when you're going to be working with an artist, and especially a legend, like, you know. So I assumed who I thought she might be, and oftentimes the people that you think are, especially at that level, sometimes you can be disappointed, or it just becomes like a, you know, there's different things to work through and levels to get past. And with Tanya, it was just, there was nothing between us. There was no, like, people mitigating things. And so I think the thing that struck me most about her was her absolute vulnerability and trust. And I just met her that same day that Brandy met her when we were filming. And I talked to her team, her people, of course, but she didn't know me. And that was like an incredibly vulnerable situation to allow to be on camera, and through everything, she was just happy to be there. So I think what I learned from her was this incredibly strong person that I had known since I was young, and was like an icon and an idol, and the way that she approaches the world, and I'm going to be myself regardless of what anybody thinks, also had this incredibly vulnerable side that was so open and so free to allow that to be trusting. And it was so easy that it was like shocking.
Well, it looked scary for Brandy when she met.
Oh, she was scared.
How about you?
She was scared.
How about you? Were you scared?
I wasn't, because as a filmmaker, it was like, this was incredible to be able to see someone meet their hero and then see it worked out the way that it did, like in a true and a very honest way. Keeps you on, like this wasn't like, oh, we meet and we fall in love and everything works out perfectly. It's like we meet and we're challenged, and I'm trying to, you know, Tanya is, or Brandy is kind of bringing Tanya forward and being a mentor to her in a way, and then they switch roles at the Loretta show, where Tanya's been a pro and been doing this forever, and Brandy's freaking out and Tanya becomes her mentor. So a lot of the goal for me was this intergenerational friendship and the power of women coming together and supporting each other. And that was completely, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen. Brandy didn't know what was going to happen. So it was exciting for everybody, I think. And Tanya was just more like, go on, y'all, whatever's going to happen.
So speaking of Loretta, I know it was a great cameo seeing her in the film, and I'm sure that was a huge moment.
Yes.
To get her to be part of it. Tell us, did she get to see this? What happened there?
No, there was a version of the film where I was going to be interviewing people to talk about Tanya if I didn't feel like I could fill it with just verite. And Loretta was, of course, the top of the list. And through COVID, a lot of these things, and just the making of film, it's like, oh, we don't actually need to hear anyone but Tanya through this film. But I always wanted her to see it, had all these plans, and unfortunately, you know, the only reason we got to film at the birthday show was because of Loretta and her daughter. And we're like, you're with Tanya, because we're like this sort of, you know, camera crew running around, and it was like independently financed at that point. So we had like a big studio behind us. We're like, hey, can we come film this? And basically Loretta and her daughter Patsy were like, you're with Tanya, you're with us, you're welcome. Come on, like regardless of like these mega stars that are there. So she was a big supporter of anything Tanya, but she didn't get to see it. But I'm so excited that their friendship is shown in this film.
Right.
And one thing that is not shown in this film, which I'll tell you in cutting room floor moment, which I regret now, is when they're playing at the Exit Inn, and it's her first like big show in Nashville, and she's on the phone with Loretta and Patsy. Loretta, so we're standing outside before we get on the bus with Tanya, and I see these guys wandering around the parking lot with peacock feathers, like just big blue, like a bouquet of peacock feathers. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder what they're doing. Maybe that's the Nashville thing. And then I see them like get on the bus, and something happens, and then we get on the bus and we start filming, and so Tanya's on the phone, and I hear her say to Loretta, I got your peacock feathers. And Loretta says, well, I sent them on out there. I want to make sure that you put those peacock feathers on, you strut out on that stage like a peacock that you are. And so she sent these guys from her ranch.
Wow.
Drove out to the show to give her these peacock feathers.
And it wasn't close.
No, it was not close. But that's like, you know, you want a friend like that who's going to send you peacock feathers when you're about to do something terrifying. And that's Loretta.
That's a great story. Great story. So, just a question to the audience here. Does anybody know who Brandi Carlile was? Okay.
Did anybody not know who Tanya was?
So Brandi Carlile has played a great, a big part in this situation and what happened with Tanya's comeback or relaunch.
Yes, relaunch.
Relaunch.
The comeback.
She did the same thing for Joni Mitchell recently. I mean, how big of an influence has Brandi been? And she doesn't even know it. What do you think of that?
I mean, she doesn't know it, and I think that I will say that there are different ways that she's done these things with folks, and I know what's been so important for her is like she's so aware of the shoulders of who she stands on and the people that came before her, and there's a difference in like women in country and I mean like music in general, but specifically speaking of this genre, country and Americana, you kind of get put on a shelf at a certain age as women aging in this culture is not always looked upon in a positive fashion, and I think part of this was the older guys can age and there's something more romantic about it, and I think part of this with Tanya was the beginning of that. It's like, let's look back at our matriarchs, and particularly Tanya, who's still vital and alive and young and potent and incredible and like has so much more music to produce. And then Joni, similarly, for different ways, I think that was, I can't speak to that because I haven't spent so much time around that process, but that was more, she got to just be around Joni, and when Joni was ready at the right time because of her health issues to come back out in the world, Brandi is that support.
Yeah.
And so I think, not necessarily by choice, she just flows into these arenas and paying attention to the folks that came before her, and spending the time to do that. She could be doing a lot of other things with her time, but she chooses to do these things, which is hugely important because, music is community and like filmmaking is community, so I appreciate that part. We can come together in these spaces and share music or film and have conversations and remember like how how we were formed and without that we would be lost. So
Absolutely.
I can't, I mean, she speaks better to it than I can, but I know that that's at least what I've seen through the process.
Yeah. Bring My Flowers Now, that song. Who clapped? Yeah, thank you. That was, to me, that part stood out to me when I watched the film. The way that song came to fruition, like I told you earlier, when talent meets talent, they figure out a way to make just something incredible.
Yep.
So, how is this, we were talking about it earlier, but that collaboration and how that song came about, and then it wins a Grammy. I mean, talk about that. You're there. You're seeing this. You're filming all this.
No, I've never experienced anything like that, where something just from an idea, it was from the story of Tanya's and a chorus she had in her mind, to Brandi getting the idea sparked, and Loretta, of course, being a part of it, like, we can write that. Right? I'll wait on that. And then we're wandering around the studio and you hear Brandi just like tinkering in the other room, figuring out the rest of the stuff. And through the whole course of then being in the studio, in between songs, Tanya's just telling stories of her life because obviously there was a lot on her mind, and the last time she made a record of original music, her father was with her. And so 50% of the time or more of that studio was Tanya telling stories and Brandi listening and asking questions and filing away all this information. And so to go from chorus idea to unplugging these pieces of your stories for them together creating the song that becomes Tanya's first Grammy, which Tanya's dad said to her, the first Grammy that you win is going to be for a song you write. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Wow. So there was so much to that was incredible, and obviously needed to be a thread through the film, and the thread involved Loretta, so it was like even bigger than we knew that it was at the time.
Yeah.
But that there's magic in that I can't possibly explain.
No, I know. I mean, when you captured it beautifully, and I think that the fact that we're able to see how it all started and then how it ended was pretty magical. And what was she nominated for? 14 Grammys?
Nominated for 14.
Never won.
Never won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
50 years later.
So on Monday, April 3rd, it was announced that Tanya was going to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Finally.
Yes. So give us, when we heard that, we thought, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
We're screening the film, and then the announcement came out, so I was like, wow, perfect timing. How does that make you feel as a filmmaker? I mean, obviously, you filmed this years ago, but hearing that, how does it make you feel as a filmmaker?
I can't even describe how happy, because, you know, she should have been nominated decades ago. And like, you know, there's the modern era, the veteran era, and she could have gotten the modern era like so long ago before she, you know, 17 years off. So a lot of wrongs to be righted in Nashville through this process. So I mean, truly like blown away, and weirdly, like I had a sense that it was going to happen, but I texted Tanya that morning, and then Brandy texted me randomly, and I ran into Shooter in a bar in Los Angeles. And then we kind of had this feeling like, announcements on Monday, something's happening, you know, and it was this weird alignment of stuff, just like a strange alignment of their creative flow. But it's, you know, point being, she should have been nominated decades ago, and I think it took this push of a reminder from the Grammy wins, you know, this film to remind them, like, yeah, by the way, you know, this is, So Tanya deserves this completely on her own right and has forever. And so I'm excited to at least be a part of this year and this push of stuff to help in the celebration of people to realize and recognize, and particularly women pushing the boundaries of music. Like and I think that's why she hasn't been nominated, is she didn't go by the path that one was supposed to go, didn't adhere to the ways a woman was supposed to behave in country music, or to the style of music. You know, she pushed the boundaries all across the board. And if you were a dude, you were allowed to do it, honestly, and if you're a woman, you weren't.
Right. Well, I thought it was pretty cool how she decided to go with Delta Dawn. Sorry. What did I say down? Dawn. Delta Dawn versus the other song, and that became the hit.
Yeah, and that's why, because, you know,
That's Tanya.
that's Tanya. She's like, knows she wants the interesting story of a woman wandering around Brownsville, Texas, searching for a mysterious dark-haired man, not the happiest girl in the whole U.S. I mean, she still recorded that. That's still on her first record, but her first single is, you know, mysterious and interesting and edgy and just like she is.
Yeah. So for those that are fortunate, you know, to watch this film, what do you hope that they gain or walk away with after seeing the film, about whether it's Tanya, Brandy, or yourself?
There's a number of things. I think one of the main pieces that I touched on before is the female friendship and supporting each other, particularly across areas where one would think you might not have a lot in common. You know, Brandy's like a up and coming, well, she's already up and came, but when we started this film, you know, she's pushing the boundaries of Americana and roots music as a queer musician in her own right. And Tanya's, you know, a legend who one would think like political worlds and all these things might not blend, but they do, and you can build these friendships and be better as a result and lean on each other. But also, I think like one of the things, or even for Tanya to remind herself, is, you know, your future is whatever you want to make it, and it's just ahead of you. And at 60 years old, you can just be beginning or re-beginning. And she's, you know, making some of the best music of her career. And she's got a new record coming out in June with Brandy and Shooter again. So, you know, it's like, it's hope, it's faith in each other, and it's faith in yourself, I think. Take away, not to be cheesy, but that's good.
No, not at all. So, we've been saying Shooter Jennings. Does everybody know who Shooter Jennings is? Who he's related to? Wait, okay.
Just like his dad.
He looks just like his dad.
It does, right?
So, Tanya and Brandy have a new album coming out June 2nd, my birthday. And So that's their second collaboration. Who do you want to collaborate with? Who's your dream collaboration besides Tanya and Brandy, of course?
Oh my God, that's a tough one.
I know.
Because I'm interested in many artists, and some that are sort of achievable and not achievable. Joni Mitchell would be one of those. But I'm also interested in finding Bobby Gentry. Y'all, she may not want to be found, but she was like one of the most profound, and for her time, like a producer, writer, singer, pushing the boundaries of music then, and she had all these incredible hits, and then just kind of stepped away from the world. So I'm interested in examining that story, whether Bobby wants to.
So, you're a filmmaker. Any advice to any filmmakers out here?
Oh, we've got a couple
It's tough.
filmmakers, right? Those are right. I see. Don't be shy now. I mean, my advice to anybody is, I mean, it's not easy in this business, but we're in an era where you can tell a story with any medium, from your iPhone to drawing to animation. But if there's a story you're passionate about, your passion is what brings people in. Like, and whether it's someone to come help you filming or it's a funder. Because with this film, you know, I just started doing it and figured it out and self-fund until I could charm people into wanting to be a part of the project, and that's what it takes. Like any art form, like you just have to commit and do it and believe in yourself and believe in your story.
Great advice.
That helpful, y'all?
So, do we have any questions? Let's go to some questions here because.
May I tell you a Tanya Tucker story?
Please.
I saw her in a concert, okay? She made us wait 30 plus minutes. She got hot, so she took off her jacket. She drank tequila on stage and served some people in the front row. And there really is a t-shirt that says, Tanya Mother Tucker.
I have one.
And she owes me, if I go to another concert, I want to go backstage or something. Anyway,
Well, she's here
it was a good concert. She can still kick it. Yeah.
She's here Saturday. Anybody else going to two-step festival? Oh, that's Man's. All right. You have another question?
Want to take some questions? Would anybody like to ask a question?
We have a question.
Hi, my name's Meredith. You captured really well the humor amongst Brandy and Tanya and the whole crew. Is there anything funny? Tanya has a lot of Tanya-isms and things that she's kind of known for saying. Is there anything unique that she said that was really funny that you didn't include in the film that you would mention?
Oh my God, there's so many. Like, I can't even. It's that was honestly what was so hard about editing this film down is you don't want to cut away from her, and there's so many jokes that like we would try to write them down, or Brandy would write them down even through the course of stuff. So there isn't like one specific thing in my mind, but it was just a constant difficulty. And I actually think that my 5-hour version of the film would still be really entertaining. I just think paid for the film or help me put it out, but
Director's cut.
But she's that person. It's like you just can't, like, it's hard to turn away from her, and it's hard to not just be enchanted by her. And I'm sorry, I don't have a line. I'll keep trying to remember.
Great question. Do we have another one? Yes, sir.
Kathlyn, thank you for such an incredible film, and I feel blessed to be able to watch it. I've been in the music business all my life, and I just want to say thank you. I do have a question about the in Nashville, when you're shooting in Nashville. I noticed some was from the Grand Ole Opry stage, and was some at the Ryman as well?
Yes.
Because the party was at Ryman's, right? Because I recognized
Yeah, the original.
the stained glass.
Yeah, the original Opry / now Ryman, when Brandy's singing and Tanya walks on stage and was listening to Brandy singing. And in fact, I tell my editor this because he didn't know. He cut the scene without the windows because in the mother church, you know, the back of it is all this beautiful stained glass. It's like, Brady, come on, you have the stained glass. That's the run. No one's gonna start doing it. You have to put the stained glass. And it's like one of my favorite moments of the whole film is where Tanya's like kind of first hearing Brandy sing, and she didn't know who she was, and she says to herself, "Mercy." And so there's that. The rhyme is that part of it, and then at the end, you know, she goes into the Opry, which is today's Opry, which is sort of, you know, re-entering this world of country music again. So you get to see both the original Opry and today's Opry. Very astute.
Good observation, huh?
Got a question here, Ray?
Yes,
Go ahead.
actually, two questions. One, did you operate one of the cameras?
Yes.
You did?
When Jess wasn't there, I would shoot main camera or second camera, her A camera.
How many cameras did you have going most of the time?
I'm unfortunately, so that my editors, I like a one camera thing, which is not like prime lens is a one camera. Every editor to my filmmakers here, they will tell you don't do that, but just make sure you get good cutaways, and it's the best way to be intimate. And so when there was a second camera, it would be me, and then when there was like a concert shoot, we'd have 3 cameras, but 2 maximum, generally 1.
And that's two huge egos in the room all the time. Was that ever a nightmare?
No, actually it wasn't. Like, the studio in particular, like, this was the most fun on any shoot I've ever had. Like, and Jess, my DP, would tell you the same, and our sound people, and my, you know, producer who was there, it was like, this was what the filming was like. Jess would be filming, and then like at some point later in the night, they'd be pouring tequila, and I'd bring her tequila, and she'd give me the camera, and then she'd sip tequila, and then the sound guy would have some. It was like the most, like, you just became part of the environment through the process, and it was really, I should make it seem more difficult.
What kind of tequila is it?
Tanya's tequila, Costa Savate, she has a tequila.
Oh.
That's why the tequila wasn't like, hey guys, I brought tequila for the day. It was just around, and so everybody would be like, here, have. It was the most fun filming, like, bar none of anything that I've ever done.
That's awesome.
I should say, it was so challenging, it was so fun.
I think we have a question over here.
The challenging came in the fundraising and making it, just saying, there are challenges, that just wasn't part of it.
Thank you. I couldn't keep my eyes. I mean, the whole 2 hours just went fast. I mean, I was just mesmerized. But what I found is not a question, but it's a kind of a comment, was interesting is because Tanya seems so, I don't know, humbling. Her idol was Elvis.
Yeah.
And Elvis was up there, and his voice, it just came natural within, and you mesmerized when you listen to his music.
Yeah.
But when she opens her mouth, and then she was critical of herself, and Brandy's like, oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
every take, the first time she loved, but something about her, she doesn't I don't know if she didn't realize how great she is, or she's humble.
Yeah,
or
she still
thought it was
doesn't.
her past.
I think that's just who she is, like that, and that's what's so amazing about her, and that was kind of the revelation about her, is that you could be full of a lot, you know, being her as talented as she is, but she's such a critic of herself, and nothing's ever good enough. She's such a perfectionist, and when she opened her mouth in the studio, like everyone, including my crew, we were like, oh my God, this is incredible, her voice, and then she's like, oh no, that's not right, we gotta do that again. Like over and over, it was just like, that's not right, that's not enough, and there's never one moment that she isn't, like, she's the most humble, and she's just one of the coolest people that I've ever encountered, like, and exciting and interesting and keeps you on her toes. Obviously, there's a scene where she didn't, you know, Brandy was like, is she gonna show up for this? But Tanya, like, takes you to the edge, and you think it's all gonna fall apart, and then she just comes in and knocks it out of the park. But so she's all of these things, and but all of it is just with humor and no ego. And I mean, of course she has ego, we all do, but not in the realm by which we see. Like, what you see is the truth. Like, this film hides absolutely nothing.
There was a part in the film where she said, I want to redo something on the album. Did she say that about the film?
Well, so.
I think I know the story, but.
So we premiered it at South by last year, and she chose to see it for the first time with an audience, which I thought was like, hey, here's the best way you can see something. If you watch this with just like me and you in a room, it's not a good experience for a film. You need people around you that feel it, and because you're gonna, she's a perfectionist and she's gonna pick it apart. But I felt like I knew Tanya enough because I lived inside her brain for years, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you." That I knew that this is. I was hoping that this is what she would choose, and she did. So we screened it. It was a blast, and then Sony Pictures Classics picked it up at South by Southwest. And we were like, we want to basically re-premiere it at Telluride. And that's like many, many, many months later. And in the meantime, I had sent her cuts of the film, like take a look at it. I went back in to tweak some things that I wanted to fix when I saw it on the screen. And then, nothing. And then it's like a couple of days before I'm leaving for Telluride, and like 1 a.m., I get a text. She's like, I don't know about that scene with the camel toe. I think I must have been in the bathroom. I don't remember. I saw that. And she just started like having a conversation with me about the film and her thoughts about it. It's like, well, T, like I can't do anything about it. And so we kind of go back and forth. And like she loves it at the end, but it was these conversations that were like many, many, many months later. And then like we've been to other festivals, and she would like step in and watch some of it, not all of it, just because she doesn't want to watch herself for that long. But her favorite stuff of it is the footage of her home movies and seeing her family and all of that, like, which I knew would be the thing. So, so anything to watch yourself reflected back is a struggle. But both Brandi and Tanya were amazing about it. But it was like these very late night, which I was like my stomach, knots. Like, dang, oh my God. Like, I want her to be happy, And she's happy in the end, but she just put me through the ringer a little bit.
Roxanne.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Thank you. So when you listen to her, top 20 hits, there is a love story. And when I watched the documentary and the love story with her parents, who loved her dearly, and she loved them, and then the part that I was like, okay, was that off limits? I mean, Glenn Campbell, okay, then again. But there was other love interests in her life, and was that off limits? Because that was probably the story, part 2, that I would like to see in her love story.
You mean other relationships aside from Glenn?
Yes.
No, nothing was off limits at all. Like, truly, I made the film, she watched it at South by, and that's the film. Like, there was absolutely nothing. I sent it to her team, but for me, I didn't want to get into the things that the world was saying about her, you know what I mean? Like, there's versions of the film, and there's that version, and that's not, unimportant to discuss, but there's so much of her story was already told, and it was about these things around her, and particularly around men. And I wanted this to be a story of Tanya as Tanya, and then you see, she's got a boyfriend. If you notice, there's there's just guys around her, and I don't want that to be the thing. And we acknowledge Glenn Campbell because you have to. It was a formative thing, and it was not just a formative relationship, but it was a formative period of her career, because she was defined by that, and not necessarily a positive way. And so, the film doesn't necessarily have a perspective on those things. It's just, I wanted Tanya to be front and center, and not to be defined by her relationships or the men and the things that
And that is the mark of a great filmmaker.
But Tanya did say, she wanted to make sure Craig looked good. She was like, I want to make sure everybody knows I got a good looking man. Because he is a good looking man.
She's taking care of her man.
Yeah, but that's also part of it, is these are the stories of her life, and you see that she's got a good person, with her today, and she does. But yeah, this is Tanya front and center is the way that I wanted this to be.
Yeah.
With Brandi as a sidekick.
Well, I'll say, laugh real quickly, because I know we're up against time here, but it was watching it for the second time, it was even better. It was a great, great documentary. I'm glad that everybody here got a chance to see it. If you hadn't seen it at South by, you saw it in Georgetown, Texas, on the square, at the Palace. Thank you to everybody with GTX Film that was involved in bringing that here. What is next for Kathlyn? What is next for you? What's next for Tin Fish Films? What's next?
Well, I had, while doing this, I was finishing a film I produced about Indigo Girls, which we just premiered at Sundance. So that's kind of taken my journey through the process, which is other, and so I've got like some projects that I began before the Tanya doc, but those on top of each other sort of took up my time. So I'm interested in continuing in the music realm, but also like need to take a minute to get my creative juices flowing again.
You need a break?
Beyond all that stuff. Well, my break has happened, so
You need a rest.
now I'm back.
Okay.
You'll be the first to know.
Great. No, that's awesome. Would love to screen anything you do. Honestly, that'd be great. If you haven't listened to the album that was part of the documentary, you need to. It's great. And Bring My Flowers Now is a song I'd never heard before until this documentary. And it's such a great song. I'm glad I heard it, and I'm glad I heard the album. The new album comes out for Tanya on June 2nd. Oh, my birthday. And yeah, I mean, this was such a great documentary. We really, really appreciate you making the trip here all the way from LA. An award-winning director, producer, Kathlyn Horan. Please do. And now we're going to head over to Barrels and Amps for our after party. We have Natalie Metcalf, who's a country singer, who is going to do some live music, and she is great, folks. If you have not heard her, you need to. She told me earlier that she learned some Tanya, so she's going to be singing some Tanya. But it's going to be a great time. I believe you're going to be there as well.
I'm going to take a drink and walk around outside.
Please, you need to. You definitely need to do that. But thank you all for being here so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Kathlyn.